Chapter 1370 President, as you know, the Fearless Alliance's power these days can't compare to our power during our peak. In contrast, the Yen family has developed quite nicely. President, even if you wanted to attack the Yen family, shouldn't you have carefully decided on the plan and strategy? Otherwise, aren't you just shoving the Fearless Alliance toward a fire pit? The elderly man in white next to Third Elder said with a snort. Yuan had seen this elderly man in white a few times before. He was a higher-up who belonged to Third Elder's faction. Also, after Lord Azura returned, the Yen family decided to offer tributes to Lord Azura every month. President, your attack on the Yen family is the same as challenging Lord Azura's authority. Have you considered the consequences, President? The elderly man started pressing aggressively upon seeing a lack of response from Yuan. Yuan was smiling satirically in her mind. In their mouths, it was like she was deemed guilty of these groundless crimes already. How could Yuan not understand that these old geezers didn't actually care whether she attacked the Yen family and killed Yen Xiong or not? If people were out to condemn you, they could always make up an accusation. President, I think you better give the Yen family an explanation about this matter, as well as an explanation to the brothers and sisters of the Fearless Alliance, the elderly man in white twittered on ceaselessly. Yuan's gaze languidly landed on the elderly man as her fingers lightly tapped the conference table. You are telling me how I should act? Yuan icily stared at the elderly man. Ha, I wouldn't dare. I'm not teaching President how to act. It's just you're a little young, President, so you act without thinking sometimes, the elderly man replied. That's right, the President has insufficient experience. The current independent state isn't the independent state from back then anymore. Not everyone can continue to call the wind and summon the rain. President, please have greater considerations about the Fearless Alliance, and don't do whatever you want. We originally thought the President could lead the Fearless Alliance back to the peak the sooner she came back, but now, it looks like. Sigh, discussion ran rampant amongst the higher-ups that belonged to the Elders faction. Yuan ran her eyes across them and was silent for a moment before nodding. She sighed and said, that's right. Everyone's words are reasonable. I haven't reflected enough about the internal affairs of the Alliance after returning to the independent state and the Fearless Alliance. Everyone's reminded me well today. The Elders and the higher-ups in their faction were startled by Yuan's words. She actually admitted her flaws. I created the Fearless Alliance by myself, and many years have passed since then. There doesn't seem to be any new blood inside the Fearless Alliance. I think everyone should know that new blood is necessary for development. Yuan's lips turned up when she said that. Luying, enter. The conference room's door was opened. Luying and the 5-member mercenary group entered. Sis Feng. Luying respectfully greeted her while looking at Yuan. When the people inside saw the 6 people, confusion filled their faces. They didn't know what Yuan wanted to do. President, who are they? Can random strays off the street come in and listen in on such an important meeting? The elderly man snorted with extreme dissatisfaction written all over his face. Yuan lightly chuckled and said, hold your horses. Chapter 1371 These fellows have decent abilities and most importantly, they're all very young, and fit the Fearless Alliance's taste a lot. They're the fresh blood I was referring to, Yuan continued. Yuan didn't give them a chance to speak and glanced at the elderly man in white from the corners of her eyes. What's your position in the Fearless Alliance? The Fearless Alliance's Department of Foreign Affairs, the elderly man in white replied coldly. Yuan nodded and turned to Luying. Luying, are you interested in a position in the Department of Foreign Affairs? Yes, Luying answered. Then from today onward, you'll join the Department of Foreign Affairs. There's no issue with that, correct? Yuan asked with light chuckle. Sis Feng, there's no issue. Luying nodded. Humph. He doesn't have an issue, but I have an issue. The elderly man looked at Yuan. President, you can't be so rash about the assignment of personnel. Every person in the Department of Foreign Affairs is extremely unique and irreplaceable. Moreover, the Department of Foreign Affairs currently doesn't have any vacant positions. Oh. So you don't have any vacant positions? Yi Wanwan sank into contemplation, her fingers knocking against the tabletop. A moment later, she looked up at the elderly man in white and chuckled gently. Then we'll vacate your position. Yi Wanwan didn't give the elderly man a chance to speak and said to Luying, Luying, you will take over as the head of the Department of Foreign Affairs from now on. Do you have any issue with that? An indescribable glint flickered through Luying's eyes. The status and honor of being the captain of the Xi family's hidden guards in China was no match for even a normal member of the Fearless Alliance in the independent state. Let alone the head of the Department of Foreign Affairs. Luying never imagined he could have had this kind of future. Luying didn't say anything and walked to the elderly man in white. Before the elderly man could react, Luying picked him up from his chair and threw him to the side. In front of everyone's eyes, Luying sat down in the elderly man's position and looked at Yi Wanwan. Sis Feng, there are no issues. The Fearless Alliance's Department of Foreign Affairs was composed of normal people without much combat skills, so how could the elderly man in white stop Luying? Nonsense. Utter nonsense, the elderly man yelled angrily. Even if you're the president, you can't be so lawless. I was the one who created the Department of Foreign Affairs with my own hands. Who'd dare to steal my spot? That's right, you can't make a hash of things even if you're the president. What is she doing? Is the president joking? Several higher-ups who had a decent relationship with the elderly man in white immediately piped in. Yi Wanwan's bone-chilling eyes swept over the room before landing on the elderly man in white. Her lips turned up in a wicked smile. I'm afraid you've mistaken something. The Department of Foreign Affairs is yours? Then do you know that the entire Fearless Alliance is mine? Yi Wanwan snorted and continued, I'm afraid everyone here has nearly forgotten all about me since I was gone for so long. The things I do, the things I decide, do I need to ask for your opinion? Yi Wanwan's words rendered everyone speechless. Elders, you must give me justice. The elderly man in white immediately turned to Third Elder and the other elders. Third Elder Li Si smiled and drank some tea before saying, the president is right. The entire Fearless Alliance is the president's, so people shouldn't comment needlessly on the mobilization of personnel. Moreover, as the president said, the Fearless Alliance also needs fresh blood. Chapter 1372. 1372. The elderly man in white gritted his teeth and wanted to say something but swallowed his words. However, Third Elder changed the topic and looked at Yi Wanwan sardonically. The Department of Foreign Affairs is responsible for negotiating with outside factions. Since the president changed the head of the Department of Foreign Affairs, this newly installed brother will need to be responsible for negotiating with the Yen family this time. If anything goes wrong, he will need to take full responsibility. Luying's brows furrowed slightly. He hadn't been in the independent state for a long time, so he wasn't familiar with the Yen family or its strength relative to the Fearless Alliance. Rashly negotiating with them with such a lack of knowledge was disadvantageous to both the Fearless Alliance and Miss Wanwan. Third Elder is right. We naturally won't say anything about your decision, President, but you will have to also be responsible for this since you changed the head of the Department of Foreign Affairs, another elder interjected. Yi Wanwan looked over the elders present. These old geezers were craftier than foxes. She originally thought she could take them down a notch but didn't expect them to have a corresponding tactic. Luying just arrived in the independent state and was just forcefully installed into his position in the Department of Foreign Affairs, so it was unrealistic for him to negotiate with the Yen family right now. Just as Third Elder said, any slip-ups that happened would not only be Luying's responsibility but also her responsibility as the president of the Fearless Alliance. That's none of your business, Yi Wanwan said coldly. Since you've made up your mind, President, us old fellows naturally don't have any objections, Third Elder Li Si said with a smile. Yi Wanwan immediately waved her hand. Meeting adjourned. The people in the conference room all stood up and followed the elders out of the room. The only people left in the giant conference room were Lu Ying and the 5-member mercenary group. Yi Wanwan didn't leave either, of course. Master, old Jiang turned to Yi Wanwan. He couldn't quite understand the current situation. Yi Wanwan took out 6 silver tablets and threw them at the people present. Independent state permits. Don't lose them, Yi Wanwan said. Independent state permits were forged by pure silver and were engraved with the owner's information, representing the owner's identity as a resident of the independent state. If they were examined by the Martial Arts Union, they merely needed to display these permits. They were akin to ID cards of other countries. After receiving their independent state permits, Lu Ying, old Jiang, and the others turned rather excited. Now that they had these, they could openly travel through every city and corner of the independent state without any more worry or fear. Master, this thing is really pretty, little Lolita was exuberant as she held the permit. Old Jiang. Yi Wanwan turned to old Jiang and said, from now on, you will be in the Fearless Alliance's Department of Foreign Affairs. If you have any issues, contact Lu Ying directly. If Lu Ying can't resolve them, come find me. Yes, Master. Old Jiang nodded. A department like the Department of Foreign Affairs was mainly responsible for contacting and negotiating with the outside factions and didn't require any martial arts capabilities, so it was fairly suitable for them. An independent state power like the Fearless Alliance was full of talented individuals in hiding, so there really wasn't another department suitable for them except for the Department of Foreign Affairs. However, this didn't mean that the Department of Foreign Affairs had a low status in the Fearless Alliance. In contrast, the Department of Foreign Affairs had an extremely high status and played a decisive role. Between civil officials and military generals, the Department of Foreign Affairs held a civil official position in the Fearless Alliance. Chapter 1373, Sis Feng, How should we resolve the Yen family matter? Lu Ying asked Yi Wanwan with a frown. Third elder Li Si was obviously discontent and deliberately made things difficult for them. Since you've been promoted to this position, you have to handle it. How about this, make an appointment with the Yen family, and I'll attend it personally. Yi Wanwan looked at Lu Ying. Lu Ying nodded. It would be great if Yi Wanwan could personally meet and negotiate with them. Oh right, do you have any news about Ajio? Yi Wanwan asked Lu Ying. I do have some news. Lu Ying pondered it for a moment before looking up and saying, Old Jiang and I coincidentally passed by a branch of an ancient clan of the independent state and might have seen Ninth Master, but we couldn't confirm it since he left with a large entourage and we couldn't see him clearly. A branch of an ancient clan? Yi Wanwan became pensive. The independent state had some secluded ancient clans aside from the factions on the surface. These secluded ancient clans were all descendants of the legendary person who created the independent state, so they had a common origin. However, due to civil war, these ancient clans fractured and were completely independent of each other now. That's right, it's the Si clan, Lu Ying nodded. This ancient clan's surname is rather coincidental, but based on my knowledge, they don't have a solid connection with the Si family in China. As for whether Ninth Master has a connection with the Si clan in the independent state, that requires further investigation. Go investigate it. Tell me as soon as you have news, Yi Wanwan said. Alright, then we'll take our leave now. Lu Ying nodded. Hold on, Yi Wanwan called after them. Master, do you have any more orders? Old Jiang asked Yi Wanwan. You've seen my current situation in the Fearless Alliance. My power as the president of the Fearless Alliance is almost completely voided by those old geezers, so there's also a very important matter aside from looking for Ajio's whereabouts. Sis Feng, what is it? Lu Ying asked. Help me raise a large army. Yi Wanwan's lips turned up with an indescribable smile. The independent state doesn't lack experts, but do you know what it lacks? What? Bearded man reflexively asked. It lacks money. Yi Wanwan chuckled lightly. The independent state has a copious amount of martial experts, so it isn't easy for experts to earn money. It's unlike China, where experts are lacking. How could it be easy for them to earn money? In China, mere amateurs like you could earn money wherever you go, and you could become a mercenary or a captain of the hidden guard. Lu Ying, old Jiang, and the others blushed upon hearing that. In China, they were considered experts, but they were worlds apart from the experts in the independent state. They were nothing. As Yu Wanwan said, with their capabilities, they could probably only be bodyguards at most in the independent state. Help me recruit people. I only want experts, Yu Wanwan ordered. Master, we don't have money, long-haired man replied. Get some from the finance department if you don't have money. The martial arts union sent me a large sum of money just today, take all of it. If it's not enough, use money from the Fearless Alliance directly. Remember, recruit as many experts as you can. Money isn't a problem. Yu Wanwan chuckled. Chapter 1374. Using the Fearless Alliance's money to build her own power was a feeling that was difficult to describe. Old Jiang chuckled eerily. Master, I'm good at that. Nothing is a problem as long as we have money. However, whose name should we use to recruit people? The Fearless Alliance's? Yu Wanwan involuntarily got lost in thought. No way could she use the Fearless Alliance's name to recruit people. If she used the Fearless Alliance's name, what would that have to do with her? What she needed was a power that solely belonged to her and was completely unrelated to the Fearless Alliance. A moment later, Yu Wanwan's eyes glinted as she said, use the Rose of Death's name. After Yu Wanwan finished discussing the details with old Jiang, Lu Ying, and the others, she led them to the finance department to withdraw all the money the martial arts union sent to them that day. Yu Wanwan returned to her office afterward. Inside the office, Big Dipper was dressed in a worker's clothes with an orange cap on his head as he sat in Yu Wanwan's office chair. He had one leg propped above his other knee as he chewed on an apple that Yu Wanwan bought for her office while humming a tune that Yu Wanwan couldn't figure out. Is my chair comfortable? Yu Wanwan asked Big Dipper after entering the office. Big Dipper stood up from the chair as soon as he saw Yu Wanwan, an embarrassed smile covering his face. The door's installed? Yu Wanwan asked him. Big Dipper nodded frantically. It's installed. Sis Feng, what the heck is going on? When I went to install the door this morning, piece of shit actually appeared. Yu Wanwan was at a loss for words. That was Yi Shuihan's house, of course he'd be there. Fuck me, when I got there, piece of shit was actually sleeping on the sofa. I accidentally woke him up. That fucker has an awful temper when he wakes up and wanted to kill me. Thank goodness I was wearing worker clothes and carrying a door, so his temper chilled a little when he realized I came to install a door. Otherwise, he'd seriously have beaten me to death. Big Dipper complained grievously. This job was too dangerous. The key? Yu Wanwan said. Big Dipper immediately took out a key from his pocket and handed it to Yu Wanwan. Sis Feng, why did you want piece of shit's house key? Big Dipper looked puzzled. It can't possibly be, do you and piece of shit have a thing? After Yu Wanwan put away the key, she rolled her eyes at him. What a wild imagination. Sis Feng. I'm not lecturing you, but don't seduce every good-looking person you see. It might cost you your life. Don't you know how to talk? Yu Wanwan rolled her eyes again. Do I look like someone that immoral? Big Dipper became embarrassed when he saw the displeasure on Yu Wanwan's face. Ahem, I was just joking. Oh right, the martial arts union said they gave you the money and permit already, so you should act soon, Sis Feng. Yu Wanwan snorted when she heard Big Dipper's words. The martial arts union wanted to use her as a knife to stab Azura. But how could it be so easy? Even if Azura just revived from the ashes, they definitely maintained their spirit and military strength. How could they be so easy to handle? A slight careless mistake and she might even lose her life. Tell the martial arts union that the Fearless Alliance will decide for itself when it will attack, Yu Wanwan said. Big Dipper was pensive. Sis Feng, it'd be best if we didn't challenge the martial arts union's authority. It might be hard for them to eradicate Azura at its peak, but it wouldn't be difficult for them to destroy us. Chapter 1375. Yuanwan turned pensive herself when she heard that. Since the beginning of history, the Martial Arts Union was the strongest power in the independent state and was considered the official power that maintained the balance in the independent state. In times of necessity, even the four great clans would help the Martial Arts Union with everything they had. Yuanwan wagered that the reason the Martial Arts Union wanted to suppress Azura was that Azura refused to be controlled and supervised and often challenged the authority of the Martial Arts Union. However, Azura didn't violate any of the independent states' rules. Hence, the Martial Arts Union would hold back its troops without moving on the surface but gathered factions like them to fight with Azura to the death in private. "Oh right," Big Dipper continued before Yuanwan could say anything. "The Martial Arts Union also sent a few dozen people here to help you, Sis Feng." "A few dozen?" Yuanwan snorted. "How generous of the Martial Arts Union to send me a few dozen people. They consider that manpower? They're decently strong. I arranged for them to stay in the hotel next to the Fearless Alliance," Big Dipper said. Yuanwan pondered over it for a moment. Her eyes shifted and a smile turned up on her lips. Yuanwan summoned Luying, Old Jiang, and the others and headed to the hotel Big Dipper mentioned. When Yuanwan opened the room door, she was seriously dumbfounded. Inside the giant suite, there were 20 to 30 people who were eating instant ramen and drinking bottled water. "Who?" A middle-aged man's cold gaze landed on Yuanwan. "How insolent. It's the president of the Fearless Alliance, Bai Feng." Luying reprimanded. "Bro flat top." The people inside the room were all shocked and turned to Yuanwan. "Everyone, were you sent by the Martial Arts Union?" Yuanwan casually sat down on the sofa and looked at them. "Sis Feng." "Yes, the Martial Arts Union sent us to help you challenge Azura." An elderly man in black looked at Yuanwan with a reverent expression. "Are you members of the Martial Arts Union?" Yuanwan asked. "No," the elderly man in black shook his head. This was within Yuanwan's expectations. The Martial Arts Union wanted to get somebody else to do their dirty work for them, so why would they allow their own members to show their faces? After conversing with them, Yuanwan's smile deepened. Most of these people violated the independent states' rules and were criminals on death row imprisoned by the Martial Arts Union. A few of them were outsiders who thought they were strong and wanted to go on an adventure in the legendary prosperous land for martial arts, the independent state. In the end, they didn't have permits, so they were caught by the Martial Arts Union and were imprisoned for several years. This time, the Martial Arts Union released them and promised them a pardon, but they had to help the president of the Fearless Alliance launch an attack on Azura. "President Bai, tell us whenever you want to attack." "We'll do anything as long as we can get our freedom," said a young man around 20 or so years old. Yuanwan chuckled lightly and gave Old Jiang a look. Old Jiang understood and looked over the group. He creepily chuckled and said, "Everyone, I respect strong people the most. So I want to ask everyone here if you want to have good days. Do you want to become famous in the independent state? Do you want to lord over everyone else?" Everyone was startled by Old Jiang's words. Yuanwan rubbed her nose. Why do his lines sound like the MLM organization? Who wouldn't want to? But that's too unrealistic. We merely want to finish our mission as fast as possible, we don't have any unreasonable demands. A middle-aged man sighed. Chapter 1376. It was extremely possible they would need to exchange their lives for freedom from the Martial Arts Union this time. The Fearless Alliance might have a great reputation in the Fearless Alliance, but Azura was more terrifying. Legend said that the previous president of the Martial Arts Union wanted to destroy Azura in one swoop. Yet now, the previous president had passed away already and the current president had taken office, but Azura was still standing. From this, Azura's fearsomeness could be seen. Everyone's worrying too much. Yuanwan looked at the people in the room, her lips turning up. From this moment onward, everyone here is free. Everyone was startled. No one refuted Yi Wanwan's words because everyone knew full well the type of person the Fearless Alliance's Bro Flattop was. She wasn't afraid of heaven or earth, and there wasn't anyone she didn't dare to provoke in the independent state. However, why would Bro Flattop offend the martial arts union on their behalf? Old Jiang, tell these brothers our plan. Yi Wanwan chuckled. Old Jiang nodded. Lu Ying pulled Yi Wanwan to the side and quietly asked, Miss Wanwan, aren't you afraid there might be spies planted by the martial arts union in this group of people? Yi Wanwan shook her head and softly replied with a smile, first of all, the martial arts union believes they've got us by our tails, so there's no need to plant spies here. Second, Azura didn't violate any rules of the independent state. If other people learned that the dispatch team contained members of the martial arts union, it would be a heavy blow to the martial arts union. Third, even if we took a step back and there were spies here, so what? These people belong to me now, and I didn't say I wouldn't attack Azura. It's just a matter of time. What could the martial arts union do? Lu Ying pondered over it for a moment and couldn't refute her, so he ended up nodding and saying, brilliant, who cared whether they planted spies here? What could they do if these people were hijacked in front of the president of the martial arts union? They would fight Azura, but at least they needed a detailed plan. Since this plan wasn't developed yet, the martial arts union couldn't say anything. Bro Old Jiang, then are we joining the Fearless Alliance? Confusion surfaced in the eyes of the elderly man in black. The Fearless Alliance? Little Lolita snorted and haughtily said, how unpleasant to hear. You aren't joining the Fearless Alliance. Then, the elderly man in black frowned. The Rose of Death. Long-haired man replied mirthfully. What? The Rose of Death? Everyone was taken back and incredulous. Could it be that the Rose of Death really exists in this world? But didn't someone say it was all fictional? Nonsense. We're members of the Rose of Death ourselves. Are you calling us fictional? Bearded man puffed up with rage and glanced at the elderly man with displeasure. No, I'm not saying that, the elderly man in black vehemently shook his head and ended up sighing. It turns out the Rose of Death is real. I didn't expect the renowned Bai Feng, President Bai, would actually be the leader of the Rose of Death, Black Widow, enough nonsense. Let me test your strength first. Little Lolita coldly shouted and struck the elderly man with her palm all of a sudden. However, the elderly man didn't dodge at all and forcefully took her hit. Chapter 1377, Why didn't you dodge? Are you okay? Little Lolita asked the elderly man with a deep frown. She placed all her strength behind that hit, why should I dodge? The elderly man looked at little Lolita with a face full of incomprehension. Little Lolita, this is too humiliating. Yi Wanwan looked at the elderly man. This old man's strength was truly inordinary. When little Lolita's strike landed, his body was akin to a placid lake surface and it didn't generate a single ripple, so he had to be an expert. As for the rest of these people, none of them were weak either since they were imprisoned by the martial arts union. Boss, at that moment, a young man wearing leisure clothes walked toward Yi Wanwan. Boss. We made a lot of friends imprisoned in the 6th floor prison. We heard people mention that there were survivors of the Rose of Death imprisoned in the 5th floor prison. Yi Wanwan's expression didn't shift, but she was inwardly shocked. The 6th floor prison was the death prison established by the previous president of the martial arts union, and it was composed of 6 floors in total. They said that the heavier the crime, the higher the imprisoned floor. From the 3rd floor onward, all the prisoners were extremely evil and savage people. When you reached the 4th and 5th floor, the prisoners were even more terrifying. As for who was imprisoned on the 6th floor, the residents of the independent state had no idea. However, this young man was saying there were survivors of the Rose of Death imprisoned on the 5th floor. Could it be that the Rose of Death really existed in this world? However, didn't Nameless Nya say the Rose of Death was merely a book mixed with illustrations and was completely fabricated? What was going on? Boss, your Black Widow, and the martial arts union imprisoned our brothers on the 5th floor. We can't sit aside and do nothing, the young man added. I don't want to do anything. Even if boss really wants to rescue them, she has to consider the plan at length and can't act rashly, the elderly man in black said. What are you afraid of? I can make explosives. A word from boss and I'll make a batch of explosives that can blast open the 5th floor. So easy, just what kind of people did I just take in? Why does he know how to make explosives? We can't. The independent state has their rules. If even the usage of firearms is prohibited in the independent state, creating explosives, do you want to kill boss? At that time, both the Fearless Alliance and our Rose of Death would be implicated. The elderly man shook his head. Yi Wanwan involuntarily sighed in relief. Thankfully, there was someone fairly rational here. Then we can kill our way there and rescue them. That place might have tight security, but it's not impossible if the Fearless Alliance and Rose of Death attack at full strength and rescue our brothers from the 5th floor. The elderly man continued. Enough, Yi Wanwan coldly ordered. I know there are people of mine imprisoned in the 6th floor prison, but you don't need to interfere in this matter. I have a plan already, so I'll naturally rescue the members of the Rose of Death at that time. Everyone finally stopped the discussion. Old Jiang, tell them the details and rules. After Yi Wanwan finished making arrangements with those people, she left the place with Lu Ying. Old Jiang and little Lolita stared at each other, bewildered. Their Rose of Death didn't seem to have any rules though. Yi Wanwan originally wanted to have further discussion with Lu Ying about the search for Si Yihan, but Big Dipper called in the middle of it and told her that previous allies discovered she was back and especially came to visit her. Chapter 1378 Previous Allies? Since they were allies, it would probably be inappropriate if she didn't see them. Helpless, Yi Wanwan was forced to return to the Fearless Alliance with Lu Ying first. Outside the conference room, Big Dipper looked at Yi Wanwan and said, Sis Feng, Trance is here. Trance. Yi Wanwan was dumbfounded. This was the supposed leader of a faction allied with the Fearless Alliance. Although Yi Wanwan heard about Trance from Big Dipper before, she didn't recognize this person at all, so how should she act in this scene? She was nearly acting to the point of numbness. 3rd Elder and 7 Star are receiving him right now. Sis Feng, go in quickly. Big Dipper said. Yi Wanwan nodded. Can I not enter? Yi Wanwan had no choice but to enter. Inside the conference room, a Western man in a white suit was sitting in a chair. Trance had a thin figure and a fair and clear face, but his sapphire eyes contained a cruel and vicious feeling. Miss Bai Feng, long time no see, but you're still beautiful. Trance stood up and greeted her with a gentlemanly smile. Yi Wanwan's eyes turned as she greeted him. Trance, long time no see. 3rd Elder Li Si's gaze didn't shift from Yi Wanwan for the slightest second. From start to finish, Li Si never believed Yi Wanwan was the genuine Bai Feng, so he had a chance to test her today. Yi Wanwan walked up and lightly embraced Trance. Although Yi Wanwan wasn't familiar with Trance at all, the two of them did act like old friends who had been estranged for many years. Based on Trance's attitude, she didn't discover anything amiss. President Bai, let's talk business. I sought you out for 2 reasons. First, I've disliked the Yen family for a while and wanted to eliminate them. I heard that the Yen family offended you recently, so that's perfect. We'll each take a portion and get rid of the Yen family together, Trance said with a smile. Yi Wanwan sighed helplessly. She didn't want to provoke the Yen family or work with Trance, but that wouldn't fit with bro flat-top style. As for the Yen family's territory, we'll follow our old practice and split it half-half. How about it? Trance continued. Half-half. Yi Wanwan pondered over it for a moment and the smile disappeared from her face. Trance, I never do half-half with people. She remembered that in a conversation with Big Dipper mentioned that when the Fearless Alliance cooperated with other factions, the Fearless Alliance never received less than 60% in the division of benefits, so dividing things half-half? Bullshit. Trance, since you aren't sincere, there's no need to continue our discussion. Yi Wanwan sneered. Third Elder secretly sneered while Seven Star's face was icy. It was so dark that ink could drop from it. Yi Wanwan had been observing Third Elder and Seven Star from the start, so her heart skipped a beat when she saw their expressions. She felt something was amiss about this. Ha, President, I'm just joking with you. I'll take 40 and you'll take 60. Don't be so serious, Trance said. Yi Wanwan's expression eased minutely when she heard that. The second thing is, Azura resurged from the dead and wants all the factions in our territory to offer tributes to him on time every month. I'm very dissatisfied by that. It's money I earned, so why should I give them a portion? President Bai. I don't think you'll pay this tribute, right? Trance asked. Chapter 1379, Of course I won't, Yi Wanwan replied. Back then, people from Azura came to the Fearless Alliance to tell Bro Flattop to pay tributes, and Bro Flattop immediately killed those people. Yi Wanwan knew about this matter, so how could the real Bro Flattop possibly pay tributes? Ha, awesome. Then, since there's nothing else, I'll take my leave now. Trance stood up. Yi Wanwan didn't say anything and peered at Seven Star secretly instead. Seven Star's entire body was akin to glacial ice right now, chilling to the bones. Yi Wanwan frowned inwardly. Something had to be off. Perhaps she exposed something due to trance. Soon, she saw Seven Star turn his phone on and draft a text. Yi Wanwan hastily snuck closer without a sound. Through the mirror in the conference room, Yi Wanwan managed to barely see the contents of the text. This woman isn't Sis Fong. I want her dead. Big Dipper, you've been deceived. The recipient happened to be Big Dipper. She couldn't see the rest of the message clearly, but the first part alone was enough. Crap, Yi Wanwan's heart clenched. She didn't say a single thing wrong since she entered the conference room, so there was no way she exposed herself that way. Moreover, Trance was a real person and wasn't fabricated by Seven Star and Third Elder to test her. If all of these reasons weren't the issue, then there was only one problem. The Western man in front of her wasn't Trance. She'd been deceived. Hold on. Before Seven Star could send the text, Yi Wanwan suddenly snorted and called after the Western man. President, what is it? Is there something else? The Western man was startled. Yi Wanwan nonchalantly walked in front of the Western man, her lips turning up in a bewitching smile. I finished playing the game with you. So, is it my turn to ask you some questions? President Bai, what do you mean? The Western man asked. Slap. Yi Wanwan lifted her right arm and mercilessly slapped the Western man in a flash before anyone could react. Caught off guard, the Western man fell to the ground from the force behind her slap. Who do you think I am? An idiot? Yi Wanwan asked with a snort. President Bai, what do you mean? Do you want to start a war between us? The Western man became furious at once. Someone, come. Yi Wanwan shouted angrily. A second later, a dozen or so elite members of the Fearless Alliance entered the conference room. They wore white clothes with the word Fearless written across their backs. Help me ask him why he's pretending to be Trance and his mastermind. If he doesn't confess, kill him, Yi Wanwan ordered detachedly. Before the Fearless Alliance members could do anything, the Western man furiously shouted, What rubbish are you saying? I'm Trance. You're Trance. Yi Wanwan snorted. I've known Trance for so many years, but how come I didn't know Trance turned into a Westerner? When Yi Wanwan said that, the smile on Third Elder's face froze and astonishment appeared in Seven Star's eyes. Yi Wanwan relaxed upon seeing that. Very few Westerners were in the independent state, so how could the leader of a faction that could rival the Fearless Alliance be a Westerner? Just now, Yuanwan suddenly recalled that the independent state's xenophobia was highest compared to all other places. So how could they allow Westerners to become so powerful here? She didn't think deeply about this before, but there were many unreasonable holes after some contemplation. Hence, she made a bet. She bet trance was Asian. This was a grand gamble, the winner would live and the loser would die. In the end, she won the gamble. Third Elder and 7 Stars' expressions were the best proof. Chapter 1387 Star looked at Yuanwan with a pensive expression. He originally wanted to use this meeting to test this woman, but he didn't expect her to know trance was Oriental. Trance was very mysterious in the independent state, and very few people had seen his real face, so most people thought Trance was a Westerner. Even 7 Star himself didn't know Trance was Oriental until today. Hence, 7 Star arranged for a Westerner to act and test Yuanwan. "Sis phone," 7 Star lightly called out. "What is it?" Yuanwan feigned a lack of awareness and glanced at 7 Star. "Nothing," 7 Star mumbled with mixed feelings. Before Yuanwan could say anything else, a burst of icy laughter was heard outside the door, and Yuanwan reflexively turned around. A man in a black suit, around 30 or so years old with a mature gentlemanly aura, entered Yuanwan's vision. "Miss Bai, it's been 7 or 8 years since we've seen each other, but you've become even prettier. If we were on the streets, I'm afraid I wouldn't have recognized you, old friend." The man had an extremely powerful presence and casually sat on the side after entering, calmly examining Yuanwan. Yuanwan's brows furrowed. This Asian man in front of her was probably the real Trance. "What's going on?" Yuanwan coldly asked the man. "Nothing. You left the independent state for 7, 8 years and suddenly returned with a different appearance, so I naturally needed to see whether you were the real Bai Feng. If it was just a stray dog pretending to be you, wouldn't that be bad?" The man continued with a smile. "Moreover, your subordinates seemed a bit suspicious too, so isn't it good for me to help you prove yourself to them? You should thank me instead." When Third Elder heard that, his expression darkened instantly. There were only a handful of people in the independent state who knew Trance was Asian. Since this woman knew Trance was Chinese, could she really be Bai Feng? Third Elder calmly walked out of the conference room immediately. "Go. Start investigating the Zhou family. I don't care whether you infiltrate them from the inside to scout or use forceful methods, find out this woman's background," Third Elder Li Si ordered his subordinates. The youths nodded and turned around to leave with their orders. "Third Elder. Since you're certain that woman is a fake, why don't you kill her directly? Why must you investigate it thoroughly?" a young man asked Third Elder with confusion on his face. This matter isn't as simple as you think." Third Elder snorted and disdainfully said, "Ever since the president disappeared, the Fearless Alliance fractured completely. Do you think there's anyone in the Fearless Alliance besides Big Dipper and those idiots who believe she's the genuine president?" "Third Elder, you mean?" The young man was startled. The current Fearless Alliance has already been divided into several major camps. Aside from Wenziren's camp, there's also First Elder and Second Elder's individual camps. The relationships involved are complicated and twisted. Every camp wants its own people to become the president. The reason no one does anything about that woman is because every camp wants to use her as a puppet and use her identity as the president to create a balancing effect, Third Elder darkly analyzed. Chapter 1381. 1381. After listening to Third Elder's explanation, the young man was taken back. Third Elder means to say that none of the Fearless Alliance's higher-ups believe she's the president. But they went along with the mistake and intentionally acknowledged her identity as the president, so that they could balance out the Fearless Alliance, of course. Third Elder snorted. Lately, many people have been looking for evidence that proves she's not the president. As long as they find evidence and publicize it, they'll have achieved a great service for the Fearless Alliance, and the party who achieves that can ascend the throne to become the president. The young man nodded. After days of trouble, that woman was actually only a chess piece to each camp. Inside the conference room, after Trance and Yuanwan inquired after each other's well-being, they developed a plan for cooperation to eradicate the Yen family and resist Azura. After Trance left, 7-Star lingered next to Yuanwan as though he wanted to say something but couldn't get it out of his mouth. Yuanwan sat in her chair silently as she combed through the recent events in her mind. After today's events, Yuanwan had a stronger realization that it wouldn't be as simple as she imagined to deceive these people and stabilize her position. Nearly all the true higher-ups like Third Elder held a very vague attitude toward her. None of them treated her like the real president of the Fearless Alliance from the very beginning. However, if a faction like the Fearless Alliance truly wanted to expose her, it should be easy, but they hadn't done that. She really couldn't figure this out. 7-Star. After some thinking, Yuanwan turned to 7-Star. Let's talk. 7-Star immediately looked up at her. What does Sis Feng want to talk about? You, along with all the higher-ups of the Fearless Alliance, have never believed in my identity, right? Yuanwan asked him. 7-Star's brows furrowed. After mulling it over for a moment, he finally said, that's right. Alright, then 7-Star. I can frankly tell you that I'm Bai Feng. Do you believe me? Yuanwan asked. I believe you 80% now, 7-Star hesitantly replied when he met her bright eyes. When Yuanwan heard that, she wanted to cry her eyes out. Damn it, my Oscar-level performance only granted me 80% credibility. Just how strong is this child's suspicion? Very well. Tell me about the situation with the higher-ups of the Fearless Alliance. Yuanwan remained calm and composed as she asked with a serious expression. 80% credibility should be enough for her to dig up some information. In contrast to 7-Star, Big Dipper was extremely unreliable, so it would be very beneficial for her to gain 7-Star's allegiance. 7-Star's attitude did ease up a little. He nodded and explained, the higher-ups are allowing you to run amok because you can be taken advantage of. If it weren't for your appearance, the Fearless Alliance would have already engaged in a civil war over the president's position. This way, regardless of who won, the Fearless Alliance would turn into a bucket of loose sand. However, your appearance coincidentally creates some checks and balances in the Fearless Alliance's civil war. Every camp will investigate you, and whoever uncovers evidence that proves you're pretending to be the president first can ascend to the president's throne. Yuanwan rubbed her chin pensively. 7-Star's explanation didn't surprise her at all. She'd definitely also do the same thing if she was in the shoes of the Fearless Alliance's higher-ups. Chapter 1382, I didn't expect I'd become a chess piece in the Fearless Alliance I created with my own hands. What a joke this is. Yuanwan chuckled aloofly. You, really are Sis Feng? 7-Star examined her. 7-Star, I rescued you from the slums when you were 9 years old, and you've followed me ever since. Do you remember that? Yuanwan asked. I remember. 7-Star nodded after a moment of silence. Yuanwan smiled with satisfaction. Good, good, this was information that she weaseled out of Big Dipper earlier. Sis Feng. 7-Star wanted to say something else but was interrupted by a Fearless Alliance member reporting that emissaries from Azura were there to see her. Azura, Yuanwan's brows furrowed deeply when she heard that. A moment later, several men entered the conference room with large strides. The leading man cupped his fists toward Yuanwan and greeted her, President Bai, it's an honor to meet you. What does Azura want from us? Yuanwan asked coldly. President Bai, our Lord Azura won't seek retributions for past events. However, as a group situated in this territory, the Fearless Alliance has to pay half their profits as tribute every month. This is the rule. I think you should understand, the leading man declared with a haughty expression. Heh! What a joke! Yi Wanwan shot up instantly and stared at the Azura members. Her expression became harsh as she said, "You should look into what kind of person I, Bai Feng, am. I only accept tributes. No one has dared to demand tributes from my fearless alliance." Yi Wanwan glanced at the emissary sardonically and sat on the sofa with her ankle on one knee. "What do you think of this? From now on, your Azura will hand over half of your revenue every month to our fearless alliance as tribute." What did you say?" The leading man's face was dark and full of disbelief. He never would have expected Yi Wanwan to say such a gutsy thing. "Go back and tell Lord Azura that if he wants a tribute, he should come see me himself. You better not make me say that a second time. I think you should know the fate of the people from Azura who came to obtain tributes back then," Yi Wanwan threatened icily. After fumbling around for so long, she was now a professional imitator of Bro Flattop's speech and style. "Alright, I'll bring President Bai's words back to Lord Azura, but you'll have to take responsibility for the consequences yourself, President Bai. We're leaving." The leader waved his hand with clenched teeth and led his lackeys out of the room pompously. At the same time, in the forbidden zone of the independent state, in an independently standing hall, on the chief seat placed in the center of the hall, there was a man dressed in a black suit with icy eyes that never seemed to melt. His powerful aura sent people trembling. Beneath him, a brunette in a suit looked up at him and said, "Ha, the Fearless Alliance's guts are truly the same as before. They dare to sprout arrogant nonsense and demand Lord Azura personally see her. Master, since Bai Feng is so imprudent, let's issue Azura's garrote order. I wager it's been a long time since the independent state has seen our Azura's garrote order." The man sitting in the chief seat didn't speak for a long time. A while later, he coldly ordered, "Dismissed." "My lord," then the Fearless Alliance, a middle-aged man beneath him asked with a dissatisfied frown. Chapter 1383, Dismissed, Si Yihan coldly said, his tone unquestionable. Yes, soon, everyone inside the hall left, and only Si Yihan and Lin Ke remained. "Ninth brother, the Fearless Alliance is so arrogant and was the most zealous when attacking us back then, so why don't we eliminate them?" Lin Ke looked at Si Yihan with obvious incomprehension. Si Yihan looked a bit dazed as though he fell into reminiscence. A long while later, Si Yihan used an icy and robotic voice to say, "Because of Wanwan." "Huh? Yi Wanwan?" Lin Ke looked astonished. "Seriously? Ninth brother, what does Yi Wanwan have to do with the Fearless Alliance?" "She's a member of the Fearless Alliance," Si Yihan replied expressionlessly. "Huh? Yi Wanwan's a member of the Fearless Alliance?" Lin Ke was shocked. This was the first time he heard about this matter from Si Yihan. Shit, when he first learned that ugly weakling, Yi Wanwan, was Ninth Brother's legendary beloved person, he was shocked enough already. He didn't expect her to be connected to an organization like the Fearless Alliance too. After Si Yihan decided to return to the independent state, he finally informed him that Yi Wanwan was a resident of the independent state and was the girl he liked. A dramatic accident happened afterward, so he brought Yi Wanwan to China in order to ensure her safety. "Ninth brother, there are too many things you didn't tell me. I'm still boggled right now. What in the world is this situation?" Lin Ke asked hastily. Si Yihan pondered over it for some time, a vicious current rippling through his face. A long period of time passed before he began his explanation in a low voice. Back then, Si Yihan was inspecting a branch of Azura when Yi Wanwan suddenly infiltrated the branch, wanting to eradicate the branch. However, Yi Wanwan ran into Si Yihan at this branch. Upon seeing Si Yihan's decent martial arts skills, Yi Wanwan thought Si Yihan was a small leader in the branch. A fondness for talent arose in her, so she earnestly persuaded Si Yihan to leave Azura and join the Fearless Alliance. When Lin Ke heard that, he covertly peered at Ninth Brother's face with a nuanced expression. Fondness for talent? Are you sure it isn't fondness of beauty?" For the next 2 months, Yi Wanwan would sneak into the Azura branch to look for Si Yihan nearly every day, thinking of all sorts of ways to poach Si Yihan to the Fearless Alliance. Si Yihan turned pensive for a moment when he spoke up to this point, as though his memories were replaying in front of his eyes. So, Yi Wanwan is a member of the Fearless Alliance? Lin Ke asked. Probably, Si Yihan dryly replied. Damn, that girl is simply. She could follow anyone but just had to follow someone like by phone. However, that girl is really something. What eyes does she have? She actually thought you were a small leader of a branch of Azura, Tisk. If Yi Wanwan knew the small leader she wanted to poach was Azura's Supreme Lord Azura, the biggest boss, I wonder how she'd feel. However, since Yi Wanwan was so persistent in poaching you to the Fearless Alliance, we can tell she's very loyal to the Fearless Alliance. Lin Ke theorized. No wonder Ninth Brother was so lax in his attitude toward the Fearless Alliance. Si Yihan dryly glanced at Lin Ke when he heard the last part, his expression chilling a few degrees. Lin Ke detected the man's displeasure and promptly changed his words. Ahem, the Fearless Alliance and such are all missed. That girl must have been solely mesmerized by your beauty, Ninth Brother, ha ha ha. Chapter 1384. 1384. Then Lin Ke asked curiously, Ninth Brother, since Yi Wanwan is from the independent state, where's her home, who are her parents, and what's her name? He had heard many fierce legends about Ninth Brother's beloved, but he never knew her true identity. It was great now, she gained another title as a member of the Fearless Alliance. Doesn't that woman have too many little disguises? Doesn't she find it madly tiring? Is that important? Si Yihan asked with a cool expression. Wanwan never told him her true name or background, but he didn't care. Fine, forget it if you don't want to say it. What happened later? Lin Ke's eyes were starry-gazed as he eagerly showed concern for his Ninth Brother. It was so rare for Ninth Brother to be willing to tell him this. It was simply a once-in-a-blue-moon opportunity. However, Si Yihan didn't say anything else. His expression merely turned colder and lonelier. When that girl who appeared out of nowhere completely dominated his life, when they even broke through that last barrier. She suddenly disappeared for 10 or so months without a trace, as though she evaporated into thin air. During that period of time, he kept searching for her, but when he found Yi Wanwan, it was the start of that calamity. The scene that day surfaced in Si Yihan's mind again. Yi Wanwan's entire body was covered in vermilion blood, as though she had crawled out from purgatory. If it weren't for him coincidentally finding her, she probably wouldn't have survived. Every time he thought up to that point, immense fear would grip him. His body of injuries was also due to that calamity. After Yi Wanwan woke up from her serious injuries, she was unwilling to say anything and merely kept begging Si Yihan to take her away from the independent state. She never wanted to come back. And so, he disbanded Azura and brought her back to China. However, after arriving in China, he had no idea what happened to her, but Yi Wanwan was in so much pain every day that death was better than life to her. She madly punished herself and would wash her face with tears, even showing an inclination for self-harm. In the end, Yi Wanwan begged Si Yihan to erase all her memories. Si Yihan didn't agree with this preposterous suggestion at first, but as her situation grew worse and worse, he simply couldn't continue to watch her suffering in that much pain. Finally, Si Yihan made up his mind and used the method of memory masking to erase all of Yi Wanwan's memories from the independent state. It was to end her pain and also to protect her safety. This time, Si Yihan only returned to the independent state because of his mother. Si Yihan's mother threatened him that if he didn't return, she would publicize Yi Wanwan's whereabouts to the entire independent state. At that time, everything he protected so bitterly would go down the drain. If he wanted to use the Si family's power in China to protect Yi Wanwan, it would simply be a fairy tale. In the end, Si Yihan had no choice but to relent and return to the independent state. If he laid down his sword, he wouldn't be able to protect the one he loved. If he clutched his sword, he wouldn't be able to embrace the one he loved. Si Yihan's dark and unfathomable eyes slowly turned to the outside of the hall. Since Azura had returned, he would allow this world to dance in his palms. Lin Ke looked at Si Yihan with a bewildered expression. Just what kind of frightening calamity and power was it that even Si Yihan couldn't prevent it? No matter what, the old king had returned. Inside the Fearless Alliance, shortly after the Azura emissaries departed, another message came. Lord Azura was holding a conference, and all the nearby major factions would participate in it. This time, they also invited the president of the Fearless Alliance, by phone. This conference called by Lord Azura would be held 3 days from now. Chapter 1385. After receiving Lord Azura's invitation, Yi Wanwan's expression was variable, but she had her own considerations about this matter. Lord Azura invited the leaders of many factions to participate in this conference, so it didn't require much thought to wager that the Martial Arts Union knew about this matter. To the Martial Arts Union, perhaps this was the Fearless Alliance's best opportunity to launch a sneak attack on Azura. If she didn't go, whether Lord Azura would unleash hell on her or not was one thing, but she wouldn't even pass the Martial Arts Union's test. Currently, the Rose of Death she was establishing hadn't come into full fruition yet, and recruitment was naturally occurring in secret, so its might wasn't that apparent. Right now, it wouldn't be wise for her to offend either the Martial Arts Union or Azura. Sis Feng, if we really accept the invitation, it won't be fun this time. Those people from the Martial Arts Union will certainly order the Fearless Alliance to use this opportunity and attack, Big Dipper lightly said as he leaned closer to Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan nodded slightly upon hearing that. She knew that, of course. Yi Wanwan previously planned to use this opportunity to escape from the Fearless Alliance. As long as she left, she wouldn't have to worry about all this anymore. However, after some deep contemplation, she dispelled that idea. There wouldn't be any point even if she successfully escaped from the Fearless Alliance. At that time, not only would she be hunted by the Martial Arts Union, but she would also be admitting she wasn't the true president of the Fearless Alliance and would be wanted by the Fearless Alliance. The results were too horrible to contemplate. 7 Star, what are your thoughts? Yi Wanwan asked 7 Star a moment later. The current 7 Star seemed to believe in Yi Wanwan's identity. He might have some lingering suspicions, but Yi Wanwan's performance wasn't enough to make him too cautious. Without waiting for 7 Star to respond, Big Dipper pursed his lips and looked at Yi Wanwan, interjecting, Sis Feng, why are you asking this rock? Ask me. I know everything. However, before Big Dipper could prattle on non-stop, he swallowed his words after a displeased glare from Yi Wanwan. Sis Feng. 7 Star turned to Yi Wanwan. This matter is unavoidable. There isn't a faction who can afford to offend the Martial Arts Union. Moreover, we accepted the Martial Arts Union's money and benefits, so we should act as agreed. Big Dipper retorted immediately, bullshit, are you saying we must sneakily attack Azura? Big Dipper snorted. Don't you know the Fearless Alliance's current situation? Sis Feng doesn't control any real power. If you tell those old geezers to launch a sneak attack on Azura, see if they'll do anything. 7 Star glanced at Big Dipper but didn't seem to have any desire to respond to him and continued to say, Sis Feng, we don't need to launch a sneak attack on Azura, we merely need to clearly show the Martial Arts Union our attitude. We can accept Lord Azura's invitation this time then decline to pay tributes every month. It'd be even better if we could wreak havoc on Lord Azura's side. This way, even if we didn't immediately attack Azura, the Martial Arts Union couldn't criticize us. Yi Wanwan nodded slightly. 7 Star was thinking along the same lines as her. As long as she made a show of taking actual action, the Martial Arts Union couldn't fault her for anything. Chapter 1386, TCH. Big Dipper pursed his lips. Sis Feng, that's what I was actually thinking. I just didn't say it fast enough. Yi Wanwan turned to Big Dipper and expressionlessly said, I know, you're the best. Big Dipper nodded vehemently. Sis Feng, you understand me, as expected. Yi Wanwan wasn't in the mood to tease Big Dipper and sighed inwardly. the Fearless Alliance was a truly churning muddy pit. Perhaps she had to wait until her Rose of Death was strong enough to crawl out of this muddy pit. The Rose of Death's headquarters was established in a manor, and the manor was bought at half price under old Zhang's coercion and threats as a member of the Fearless Alliance. All the recruited experts were arranged to reside within the manor. The manor's surroundings were currently desolate. The silence was soon disturbed by the arrival of a young man dressed as a Taoist devotee with an enigmatic smile on his face. Heavenly Venerate Immeasurable. Is there anyone home? The Taoist devotee shouted at the manor. Is there anyone home? Come out quickly. After calling for more than half a minute without any response, the Taoist priest's expression turned impatient. Who is it? A moment later, an elderly man in black came out from the manor. This elderly man's name was Jiang Cheng. He was a top-notch expert who was from the first batch of recruits for the Rose of Death. Heavenly Venerate Immeasurable. I just wanted to ask, is this the Rose of Death's headquarters? The Taoist devotee was grinning. Jiang Cheng was startled briefly, and his brows furrowed. How did you know? A friend referred me, the Taoist devotee replied. Oh. Jiang Cheng was pensive. The Rose of Death had recruited quite a few experts lately, so a referral from a friend was plausible. Little brother, it won't be that easy if you want to join the Rose of Death. We have to examine your martial arts skills to determine whether you're qualified to join the Rose of Death, Jiang Cheng said. The Taoist devotee looked thoughtful upon hearing that and nodded after a moment. It's nothing, it's nothing. I was just casually asking. Confirming that this place is the Rose of Death's headquarters is enough. After saying that, the Taoist devotee turned to leave. However, Jiang Cheng's face darkened abruptly. This Taoist devotee's behavior was extremely odd. There was no way he was referred by a friend. He simply came to confirm the location of the Rose of Death's headquarters. Although Jiang Cheng didn't know this Taoist devotee's intentions, he wouldn't allow him to leave until he figured it out. Bastard, you have the nerve to scout around for information on the Rose of Death? Jiang Cheng became furious and disappeared from his spot. A breath later, he appeared next to the Taoist devotee. Jiang Cheng grabbed the Taoist devotee's shoulders. Unless you explain yourself, I'm afraid, you won't leave alive today. Heavenly Venerate Immeasurable, old mister, don't have such a fiery temper. It's bad for your health. The Taoist devotee's figure shifted minutely as he said that. Astonishment flickered through Jiang Cheng's eyes. This Taoist devotee's martial skills were unfathomable. He managed to shake Jiang Cheng off with his body alone. Jiang Cheng wanted to call for some backup, but the Taoist devotee was extremely fast and disappeared without a trace in an instant. Yun City, Nye District, each of the four great clans dominated a major district of the independent state. For example, the district that the Nye family occupied was named the Nye District. These districts were named after the surnames of the four great clans. At the Nye residence, after Taoist devotee entered the residence, he headed straight for the main hall. Chapter 1387, Captain. Taoist devotee shouted loudly upon seeing nameless Nye. What are you panicking about? What a disgrace. Nameless Nye glanced at Taoist devotee. No, Captain, I have something to tell you, Taoist devotee hastily said. Nonsense, I'm not done eating yet. Wait till I'm done. Nameless Nye held a plate of potstickers with a hand and was eating them while looking at Taoist devotee with displeasure. Captain, I really have something urgent to tell you. Taoist devotee didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Spit it out. Don't hold me up from eating my potstickers. I'll give you a minute, Nameless Nye said coldly as he carelessly tossed the plate to the side. Taoist devotee was silent for a moment before walking toward Nameless Nye and asking seriously, Captain, guess what I discovered today? Nameless Nye's brows furrowed. Guess whether I'll kill you or not. Taoist devotee rubbed his nose and chuckled awkwardly. Captain, I have news about the Rose of Death recruiting people today and found the Rose of Death's headquarters. Their headquarters is in Yun City. Nameless Nya was taken back. Rose of Death? What's going on? Where the hell did this Rose of Death come from? Captain, it goes without saying that they must be fakes. Lately, we've decreased our efforts in exposing fakes, so some reckless idiots started inciting trouble again and are pretending to be the Rose of Death, Taoist devotee explained. Nameless Nya's expression chilled completely, and his face was so dark that ink could drip from it. A few years ago, countless groups pretended to be Rose of Death, but those groups were all uprooted by Nameless Nya. A long time ago, Nameless Nya announced that the Rose of Death didn't exist and everything was fabricated. Moreover, he didn't permit anyone or any group to pretend to be the Rose of Death. Otherwise, he would kill any violators without mercy. Barely any time had passed since then. Yet, now there was someone in Yun City of the independent state who dared to ignore his authority and pretend to be the Rose of Death under his very nose. This was a blatant infringement on his copyright. Where? Nameless Nya asked Taoist devotee coldly. Taoist devotee smiled enigmatically and pulled out his phone, opening his photos before placing them in front of Nameless Nya. His fingers kept flipping through the photos as he said, "Captain, look, I took photos of the Rose of Death's headquarters." Nameless Nya looked at Taoist devotee's photos pensively and asked with confusion, "Why are you showing these to me?" He was going to have Taoist devotee lead the way to the headquarters of that fake Rose of Death, but why did Taoist devotee show him these photos? "Captain, look, I've taken photos of this place, so you can go by yourself." "I still have something to do," Taoist devotee replied seriously. Nameless Nya nodded but didn't say anything and grabbed Taoist devotee by his ear before dragging him out of the door. At the same time, the Rose of Death's headquarters, Yi Wanwan sat in the chief seat and swept her eyes over the people below her. Many of the newly recruited experts looked at Yi Wanwan with astonishment and disbelief on their faces. The legendary, terrifying and bloodthirsty leader of the Rose of Death, Black Widow, was actually so young and beautiful. Several young men who thought they had good looks instantly straightened up. Rumors said the Black Widow was keen on beautiful men. Chapter 1388. Soon, several dozens of men and women wearing long, rose-red robes and silver fox masks slowly walked toward Yi Wanwan and bowed to her. These people wearing silver fox masks were personally selected by Yi Wanwan and were currently the strongest members of the Rose of Death. Everyone looked at Yi Wanwan silently. This was the new recruits' first time seeing the legendary Black Widow, so they didn't dare to say anything. Yi Wanwan was about to say something when the elderly man, Jiang Cheng, suddenly came forward and said, "Boss. An incident happened, speak," Yi Wanwan ordered coldly. Jiang Cheng didn't dare to conceal anything and cautiously said, "A young man came earlier. He heard about the Rose of Death's recent actions from somewhere, found this place, and confirmed this was the Rose of Death's headquarters." As Jiang Cheng said this, old Jiang, little Lolita, and the others all became alarmed upon hearing that. Someone found the Rose of Death's headquarters? What's their purpose? You didn't seize that person? Little Lolita asked Jiang Cheng with a frown. Jiang Cheng shook his head, his expression serious. I wanted to seize him, but that young man was too strong. I'm very ashamed, but I was no match for him. No match for him. Shock grew on the faces of old Jiang, little Lolita, and the others. All of the Rose of Death's recruited members were elite experts, and none of them were freeloaders. Jiang Cheng especially could be considered a top-notch expert of the Rose of Death, so how could it be possible that Jiang Cheng was no match for this stranger? Yi Wanwan's expression remained the same but she was inwardly pensive. Who was scouting for information about the Rose of Death and why? Could it be the Martial Arts Union, or perhaps Azura? However, after carefully thinking about it, whether it was the Martial Arts Union or Azura, they both wouldn't have needed to do this. If it wasn't those two factions, who else could it be? Before Yi Wanwan could think further, the sound of an intense impact was heard from the distance. A few seconds later, an elderly man scampered into the living room with a panicked expression and hastily kneeled in front of Yuan. "Boss, someone from the Nye family is here." "The Nye family?" Yuan shot up with a deep frown. "Which Nye family?" Yuan asked. "It's the Nye family, that's one of the 4 great clans of the independent state." The elderly man was ghastly pale. The newcomer was too terrifyingly powerful. Even dozens of brothers couldn't ward him off. So what if it's the Nye family? Jiang Cheng's face turned cold. Even if it was the Nye family, they couldn't act insolently in front of Black Widow. Heavenly venerate immeasurable, pretending to be the Rose of Death. Everyone is quite gutsy. However, did you think about the consequences? Taoist devotee's voice traveled into the room. Yuan couldn't help but start upon hearing that voice. For some reason, she found this voice very familiar sounding. When Taoist devotee finished saying that, nameless Nye and Taoist devotee slowly entered the hall. "You're calling us pretenders?" The dozens of silver fox masked experts surrounded nameless Nye and Taoist devotee instantly. "Heh! Of course you're pretenders. The Rose of Death doesn't exist in this world. It was merely fabricated by our Nye family. Everyone," nameless Nye announced a long time ago that he prohibited anyone from swindling people using the Rose of Death's name. "You don't seem to want to live." Taoist devotee snorted. Chapter 1389. What? Pretenders? Everyone looked at each other bewildered when they heard Taoist devotee's words. They also heard that the Rose of Death didn't exist, but they didn't take it seriously back then and merely treated it as a joke. In truth, after joining the Rose of Death, the majority of the experts present were somewhat suspicious, but they didn't dare to make open inquiries to get to the bottom of it. Until an expert from one of the 4 great clans, the Nye family, came to challenge this place and personally declared that the Rose of Death didn't exist. "Could it be, the Rose of Death really doesn't exist and we've been deceived?" a man wearing a silver fox mask murmured. "Think about it carefully, although the Rose of Death is extremely famous, it's all just rumors. None of us has ever seen the Rose of Death in action. Plus, why would the Rose of Death's leader, Black Widow, be so young?" Jiang Cheng's brows locked together. However, the Rose of Death clearly existed. He once had the honor of meeting some of her brothers in the 6th-level prison. What's going on here? Unless we are really pretenders, a fairly good-looking woman turned to Taoist devotee with misgivings. "Ha, of course. How could the Rose of Death exist in this world? You pitiful fellows have been deceived." Taoist devotee snorted. Yuan felt somewhat guilty. Her vision was blocked by everyone, so she couldn't see the newcomers and the current situation clearly. However, the Rose of Death's copyright wasn't theirs, so what business was it of theirs? Why did they come here to expose her? Upon seeing the situation spiraling out of control, Yuan had no choice but to straighten her back and coldly shout, "Who's acting insolent here?" Taoist devotee and nameless Nye were taken back. Why does this voice sound so familiar? After Yuan spoke, the people crowded in front of her swiftly receded to the 2 sides. When nameless Nye and Taoist devotee saw her, they were astonished. Even Yuan froze on the spot. "Say, doesn't this woman look a bit similar to Boss Famous?" Nameless Nye rubbed his chin and asked Taoist devotee. Taoist devotee's lips twitched slightly. "Is my captain blind?" "Captain," Taoist devotee turned to nameless Nye. "She isn't just similar, they look like identical twins. They're extremely similar looking." After saying that, Taoist devotee stared at Yuan and clicked his tongue. "So you're the woman pretending to be Black Widow from the Rose of Death. You look very similar to a friend of ours in China." When Yuan saw nameless Nye and Taoist devotee, she was somewhat excited at first, but her face turned dark the second she heard Taoist devotee. Is there something wrong with these 2 people's heads? They can't even recognize me face to face. It's only been a few months. Girl, you're rather gutsy. You dare to pretend to be the Rose of Death. Tell me, who gave you the guts? Taoist devotee snorted and questioned her. Some distance away, little Lolita, old Jiang, and the rest of their group watched this scene with a flabbergasted expression. Aren't these two people the experts who saved us back in Myanmar? Why did they come here to cause trouble suddenly and claim we're pretending to be the Rose of Death? Chapter 1390. Yuan slowly stood up from the chief's seat and glanced at nameless Nye, then Taoist devotee. She snorted and said, "Ha, you too, your wings hardened after returning to the independent state. Should I turn you into clipped-winged angels?" All the experts became more uncertain upon hearing that. They started to believe they were conned and deceived, but how could Yuan dare to challenge two people from the Nye family if she wasn't Black Widow? Taoist devotee had an odd expression as he stared at Yuan, as though he wanted to say something. "Who are you?" Nameless Nye asked coldly. Yuan glanced at the bewildered Nameless Nye, her lips twitching slightly. "Nameless Nye, you're rather impressive now. You're different from back when you kept pleading me to help you look after Tang Tang again and again." All the experts looked at each other blankly, becoming more dazed. What kind of code language are they using? Shit. That's impossible, right? Taoist devotee's expression shifted. There are thousands of miles between the independent state and China. It's impossible. Moreover, you couldn't have come to the independent state without a permit. What's going on? Nameless Nye looked at Taoist devotee, flabbergasted. What are you saying? Who in the world is this woman? What does looking after Tang Tang mean? Before Taoist devotee could reply though, Nameless Nye became shocked and exclaimed, "Shit! That's impossible, right? Boss famous?" "That's right, Captain." No wonder they look like identical twins, they were the same person to begin with. Taoist devotee nodded several times. "You idiot, you can't even recognize Boss famous? You're saying they're twins? Are you brainless? Are you blind?" Nameless Nye shouted at Taoist devotee. Taoist devotee looked at his captain incredulously. He would admit it if someone else said that to him, but his captain. Where did he get the face to say that to me? Didn't he not recognize her himself? He merely said they looked similar. At least I said they were twins, which is closer to the truth. You two, follow me. Yuan looked at Nameless Nye and Taoist devotee before turning and entering the inner hall. Nameless Nye and Taoist devotee glanced at each other and ended up following Yuan into the inner hall, leaving behind a group of baffled people. In the inner hall, Nameless Nye looked at Yuan, full of astonishment. He asked excitedly, "Sister Famous Yi, it's really you? Why did you come to the independent state? Could it be you came to visit us? Wait, how did you come to the independent state? Do you have a permit?" Yuan rolled her eyes at Nameless Nye's prattling and string of questions. "Is that the key point? I came to find someone. Didn't I tell you? I originally wanted to come with you to the independent state. But my calls didn't go through, and you didn't respond to my messages," Yuan explained. Nameless Nye nodded and explained pensively, "Phones aren't allowed to be turned on in airplanes. After arriving in the independent state, we couldn't use our previous SIM cards and phones anymore, so we threw them away." "But Sister Famous Yi, aren't you too gutsy? You dared to trespass in the independent state? You don't have a permit, right?" "I don't," Yuan shook her head honestly. "Sister Famous Yi, you seriously aren't afraid of death? The independent state has always rejected outsiders, and outsiders typically don't turn out well after entering the independent state," Nameless Nye said. Chapter 1391. Nameless Nye's brows furrowed slightly. He came there due to the Rose of Death today, his expression chilled instantly, and he looked at Yuan. "Sister Famous Yi, did you know anyone who pretends to be the Rose of Death will turn into bones and ashes?" "Alright, Call Iceberg Man, little sweetie, and spray of flowers here. Yi Wanwan nodded calmly. Call them for what? Taoist devotee didn't understand. Of course we're calling them, it's most important for a family to be together. The 6 of us can go to Yellow Springs one hand in hand. Yi Wanwan chuckled. Go to Yellow Springs? Nameless Nya looked at Yi Wanwan, baffled. What do you mean? Didn't you just say anyone who pretends to be members of the Rose of Death had to die? Yi Wanwan asked. That's right. Nameless Nya nodded. Exactly. Yi Wanwan snorted. You haven't forgotten how I hired you to be my bodyguards back in Myanmar, right? Of course we haven't forgotten. Ah, we had several hot pot meals in China with the money we earned that time. So satisfying. Taoist devotee nodded vehemently. So the 6 of us pretended to be the Rose of Death together. You didn't forget about this, right? Since anyone who pretends to be the Rose of Death has to die, that's perfect. The 6 of us can die together, whole and intact. Yi Wanwan looked at Nameless Nya. Nameless Nya, Taoist devotee, Nameless Nya and Taoist devotee met each other's eyes. They really had pretended to be the Rose of Death with Yi Wanwan. How could this BL*OD bastard be so cunning? She tricked all of us. If the patriarch of the Nya family comes back and learns about this, I'll be in for a round of damn scolding again. When Yi Wanwan saw Nameless Nya and Taoist devotee becoming embarrassed, her eyes shifted and she threw her arm around Nameless Nya and pressed him into a chair. She grinned and said, let's forget about the past. I have business for you. What business? Taoist devotee leaned in immediately. Look, you were the ones who created the Rose of Death. So it's your copyright. That's a major IP, but it's useless in your hands. How pitiful and wasteful, am I right? Yi Wanwan asked cheerfully. IP? Nameless Nya looked confused. What's an IP? IP is intellectual property. You've seen movies and novels, right? That's intellectual property and copyright. The Rose of Death is intellectual property created by you, so how about you sell the Rose of Death to me and I'll manage the Rose of Death's copyright? Yi Wanwan tried to persuade them emotionally. Nameless Nya finally understood after Yi Wanwan's explanation. He immediately shook his head and said, no. I won't sell it. You won't sell it? Are you a pig? Yi Wanwan sounded disappointed like she expected better from him. What use is the Rose of Death in your hands? It isn't worth a penny. But do you know how valuable it would be if you transferred it to me? This thing can earn money. Nameless Nya looked doubtful. Rubbish. Of course it can earn money. Yi Wanwan chuckled and said, after you transfer the Rose of Death to me, I'll be the Rose of Death's leader, Black Widow, from now on. After I become stronger and propagate the Rose of Death, I'll demand tributes. Isn't that money? Later on, I'll suggest we build a Rose of Death theme park or playground. Aren't tickets money? After that, I'll produce a blockbuster movie on the Rose of Death, then an anime, then merchandise, and so on. Do you understand what a large sum of money that is? Chapter 1392 Nameless Nya and Taoist devotee were utterly dumbfounded after listening to Yi Wanwan. These kinds of maneuvers existed? I won't buy you out. I'll give you a percentage and allow you to buy a share. At that time, wealth will roll in endlessly. The Shin family's supposed wealth that can beat a country's. It will all be pushed to the side. At that time, you'll be richer than the Shin family. Yi Wanwan cajoled. Captain, we're gonna be rich. Taoist devotee was mystified by the explanation, but he was brimming with excitement. The Shin family squeezed into the 4 great clans simply by relying on their profound wealth. If they were richer than the Shin family. Shut up. Nameless Nya harshly glared at Taoist devotee before turning to Yi Wanwan, an ingratiating smile spreading on his face. Boss famous. Say, about this buyout fee. And the division of the shares, I definitely won't treat you unfairly with our relationship. I never cheat familiar people. We'll divide it 20% and 80%, Yu Wanwan said. Nameless Nya became joyful, but before he could say anything, Yu Wanwan added, I'll take 80% and you'll take 20%. I'll take 20%. Nameless Nya was taken back. That's right, you'll take 20%. Yu Wanwan nodded with conviction. Captain, we only have 20%, Taoist devotee didn't look too satisfied. However, Nameless Nya thought about it for a moment and finally nodded. As long as it earns money, I'll take 20%. This method of earning money is legal, right? Of course it's legal. It's even international. After the Rose of Death becomes a truly major piece of intellectual property, the whole world will know you, Nameless Nya, are the author. Yu Wanwan bobbed her head. Before Nameless Nya could reply, Yu Wanwan took out 5 $100 bills from her pocket and placed them in Nameless Nya's hand. This will be the transfer fee. Take it. Only $500, Nameless Nya was discontent. After we start earning money, you won't care about this tiny sum. Cast your sights farther onto the horizon. Believe me, I'm right, Yu Wanwan advised him meaningfully. Captain, Boss Famous is a famous manager in China and produced several best actors and best actresses. Her credibility is extremely high. Taoist devotee said. In the end, under Yu Wanwan's coercion, the Rose of Death's copyright ended up in her hands. From now on, her Rose of Death was real and effective, she would no longer be pretending. A moment later, Yu Wanwan, Nameless Nya, and Taoist devotee appeared in front of everyone again. Nameless Nya wore a solemn expression. Allow me to explain, it's like this, we were mistaken earlier. You're not pretenders. It's all this trash's fault for confusing me. Taoist devotee was rendered speechless instantly. Captain seriously capable at turning his back on someone. Apologize to widow already, Nameless Nya said. Taoist devotee looked at Yu Wanwan and smiled apologetically. Widow, it's my fault. I'm very sorry. I definitely won't jump to conclusions next time. I've disturbed you today. You're the freaking widow. Your whole family is widows, forget it, clueless people are innocent. Today's events were a mere misunderstanding. Everyone shouldn't take it seriously, Yu Wanwan said calmly. The suspicious experts earlier were cleared of all doubts. Since the Nya family said that, their boss was definitely Black Widow for sure. You're too rash. I hope you'll look before you leap next time. Jiang Cheng's face was dark with displeasure. Yes. I'll remember. Next time, I'll definitely look before I leap and won't cause trouble for no reason. Taoist devotee sounded a bit aggrieved. Yu Wanwan said, since this matter is settled, I'll see the two of you out. After leaving some instructions to old Jiang and little Lolita, Yu Wanwan led Nameless Nya and Taoist devotee out of the manor. Halfway through, Yu Wanwan looked at Nameless Nya and asked hesitantly, is Tang Tang doing well, at home? Chapter 1393, 1393. When Nameless Nya heard that, he was taken back. Why did she suddenly mention Little Devil for no reason? He's not too different from before. After a moment of contemplation, he added, that Little Devil isn't close with his real mom after coming back and he runs around the house lawlessly. No one can control him, he's bad to the bone. Yu Wanwan couldn't help but glance at Nameless Nya. How's baby Tang Tang bad? I didn't know that. Children are like that. He'll get better after he familiarizes himself with his mother, Taoist devotee interjected with a chuckle as he leaned in. Who knows whether she's his real mom? Nameless Nya snorted. That sister of his wasn't pleasing to the eyes no matter how he looked at her. Hey, Sister Famous Yi, since you happen to be here, how about you pay a visit to my house? Nameless Nya suggested to Yu Wanwan. Where's your house? Yu Wanwan asked. The Nye district. You should have heard of the Nye family after coming to the independent state, right? Nameless Nye said. The Nye family, Yi Wanwan surveyed Nameless Nye. You're really a member of the Nye family, one of the 4 great clans in the independent state. That's exactly it. Boss Famous, our captain is the eldest young master of the Nye family. Taoist devotee said. The eldest young master of the Nye family, Yi Wanwan stared at Nameless Nye with astonishment and disbelief. As one of the 4 great clans in the independent state, the Nye family was overwhelmingly powerful and immensely frightening. Yet, Nameless Nye was actually the eldest young master of the Nye family. However, he didn't look like it no matter how she examined him. How could he be impoverished to this extent as the eldest young master of the Nye family? Ha, Sister Famous Yi, since you're here, how about you live at the Nye residence for now? It'd be safer for you to stay with the Nye family as someone without a permit, Nameless Nye said with a grin. Yi Wanwan sank into contemplation. Although she missed Tang Tang, it wouldn't be advantageous for her to go to the Nye residence right now. In 3 days, she had to attend Azura's conference since she accepted Lord Azura's invitation, so there was a time conflict. Additionally, based on her experience in China, the madam of the Nye family and Tang Tang's biological mother didn't seem to welcome her. I still have some business to handle. Since I'm here in the independent state, I'll definitely visit the Nye residence, but it's not urgent, Yi Wanwan replied. Captain, let's not distract Boss Famous from earning money. Boss Famous just obtained the Rose of Death's copyright, so she must have a pile of things to do. Isn't preventing Boss Famous from earning money the same as preventing ourselves from earning money? Taoist devotee said to Nameless Nye. Nameless Nye nodded, he fully agreed with Taoist devotee. Oh right, did you find the person I had you guys help me look for last time? Yi Wanwan suddenly recalled how she requested them to search for Si Yihan when they left China. However, Yi Wanwan wasn't too hopeful since Nameless Nye's group was so unreliable. We, of course, prioritize the things that Sister Famous Yi tells us. Nameless Nye looked at Yi Wanwan enigmatically before looking around and secretly saying, Sister Famous Yi, I had to use quite a few bribes to look for this information. Say, Yi Wanwan's lips twitched when she saw Nameless Nye extending his hand toward her. Is money the only important thing in this guy's eyes? He's the eldest young master of the Nye family, one of the independent state's 4 great clans. What an utter disgrace to the Nye family. Yi Wanwan glanced at Nameless Nye darkly before taking out $100 bill and handing it to him. Chapter 1394 Nameless Nye accepted the money and chuckled playfully. After I came back, I looked into it, and there's a recluse ancient clan named the Si clan in the independent state. Within the Si clan, there's someone named Si Yihan. He's a new star in the Si clan, but he's very mysterious and rarely reveals himself. Yi Wanwan was surprised by Nameless Nye's news. She naturally knew about the recluse ancient clans in the independent state and that one of the extremely powerful ancient clans was the Si clan. However, how could Si Yihan be related to the independent state's Si clan? The Si clan was such a behemoth in power. Although Si Yihan's surname was Si, it was because he was from China's Si family. Could the Si family in China be related to the Si clan in the independent state? Ha, Sister Famous Yi, don't bother. I don't think it's possible. Nameless Nye chuckled lightly. The person you want to find is the patriarch of China's Si family. The surname might be the same, but there's plenty of people surnamed Si. You can't link them together simply because they have the same surname, right? Taoist devotee turned to Nameless Nye. Captain. This isn't just the same surname, even their names are the same. Nameless Nye glanced at him with displeasure. Which of us is the captain? Captain, Boss Famous, I've had some dealings with the Si clan before, so I know a little about them. How about I tell you a little about the Si clan? Taoist devotee asked. Sure. Yi Wanwan nodded. In truth, starting several centuries ago, the sons born in the Si clan undergo professional testing after they reach a certain age. These tests include intelligence, physical, virtue, etc. If there's even one area that fails, the Sea clan sends the son out of the independent state, and those children who are sent away will be protected by designated people. After they reach adulthood, they're allowed to develop as they wish on the outside, Taoist devotee explained slowly. Nameless Nya pursed his lips. How's this related to the person Sister Famous Ye's looking for? Of course it's related. Taoist devotee smiled slightly, looking like a profound immortal. After those sons who are sent away have children with their partner and their children reach a certain age, the Sea clan will send people to bring the children back to the independent state to be tested again. If the children pass the tests, they will stay behind. If the children don't meet the standard, they will be sent back. Hence, Captain, Boss Famous, do you think Si Yihan's father was a child who didn't pass the Sea clan's tests and was sent away? Later, his father had Si Yihan and Si Yihan was brought back to the Sea clan in the independent state to undergo testing. He ended up passing the test and staying in the Sea clan. It isn't impossible. Yi Wanwan was pensive after listening to Taoist devotee's explanation. If it was Si Yihan, he would definitely be retained in the Sea clan with his capabilities. But then Taoist devotee's hypothesis had to be true and Si Yihan's father was a descendant of the Sea clan who didn't pass the tests and was sent away. How do you know so much? You aren't part of the Sea clan. Nameless Nya stared at Taoist devotee. Captain. I'm not from the Sea clan, but I'm from the Jiang clan. Back then, my father was sent to China and created the Jiang family in China. Later, I was brought back to the independent state by people from the Jiang clan, Taoist devotee side. Whether it's the Jiang clan or the Sea clan, they're cut from the same cloth. Yi Wanwan looked at Taoist devotee with surprise. She never expected him to be a descendant of the Jiang clan. Chapter 1395. The Jiang clan was one of the major recluse ancient clans, its prestige matching that of the Sea clan. If that's true, then Si Yihan might really be a member of the Sea clan. Yi Wanwan looked conflicted. If that's true, then it'd be tragic. Nameless Nye guffawed. Tragic? Yi Wanwan was startled. Why? Sister Famous Yi, there's a person called Piece of Shit in the independent state. Taoist devotee looked at Yi Wanwan and mysteriously said, Piece of Shit once declared. He'd eradicate all of the ancient clans in the independent state. Yi Wanwan looked pensive at the mention of Piece of Shit. Why? How should I know? Anyway, Piece of Shit only attacks those ancient clans and never attacks any other factions. Even if you provoke him, he'll merely teach you a lesson at most. But ancient clans are different. Even if they don't provoke him, he'll try to kill them, Taoist devotee explained. Those ancient clans were the descendants of the extraordinary person who created the independent state back then. No one knew how many ancient clans there were, but Piece of Shit dared to take on all the ancient clans by himself. Yi Wanwan knew Piece of Shit was very strong, but she didn't know Piece of Shit was strong to that extent. Piece of Shit. Is he really that strong? Yi Wanwan murmured with a frown. Boss Famous, you don't know, but there were two people who were called the most underestimated people in the independent state back then. One of them was Piece of Shit. Taoist devotee smiled faintly. Who's the second one? Yi Wanwan asked curiously. The second one was the boss of Azura, Lord Azura, Taoist devotee answered. Yi Wanwan, I feel like dying. Lord Azura is on par with Piece of Shit. Shit, doesn't the martial arts union obviously want me to die by telling me to attack Lord Azura? Actually, those aren't the only two people who are underestimated. Nameless Nye snorted. There are 3 people in total. The third person is me, Nameless Nye. Devotee, Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan shook her head in exasperation at Nameless Nye's serious expression. It was truly a pity that Nameless Nye didn't do stand-up comedy. Who's stronger between Lord Azura and Piece of Shit? Yi Wanwan asked Taoist devotee. That depends on the area you're asking about. Martial arts-wise, piece of shit probably doesn't have a match in the world. If we're talking overall, Lord Azura is probably stronger than piece of shit. Taoist devotee looked at Yuan Wan. However, I heard fellow Jiang clansmen say that piece of shit is Lord Azura's older brother. Of course, I don't know whether it's true or not. Yuan Wan was skeptical when she heard that. Lord Azura and piece of shit weren't related in the slightest. A few days ago, Yuan Wan asked piece of shit about Lord Azura, and he wasn't familiar with Lord Azura at all. He had only heard of him before, so how could they be brothers? Oh right, Sister Famous Yi, why are you asking this? Nameless Nya looked confused. Isn't she looking for Si Yihan? Why did she bring up piece of shit and Lord Azura? Yuan Wan sized Nameless Nya up and down, her eyes shifting. She threw her arm around Nameless Nya's shoulders and chuckled lightly. Brother Nameless. I need your help with something, what? Nameless Nya shuddered. He wasn't used to Yuan Wan calling him brother. Chapter 1396, In Truth. It's like this, Yuan Wan laughed mischievously at Nameless Nya. Are you free in 3 days? Help me take care of Lord Azura. Nameless Nya and Taoist devotee were both taken back. Take care of Lord Azura. What was going on? Yuan Wan had no choice but to tell Nameless Nya the whole story. Yuan Wan had never been on guard against Nameless Nya and his group, nor did she need to be on guard. These people were her closest friends and brothers. After coming to the independent state, Yuan Wan also considered Nameless Nya family. After learning about everything that Yuan Wan had done since she came to the independent state, Nameless Nya and Taoist devotee were rendered speechless. This was too freaking insane. They even recognized their president incorrectly. Did the entire Fearless Alliance turn into idiots? Taoist devotee was incredulous. They must have an ulterior motive. Sister Famous Yi, I advise you to leave the independent state as soon as possible and don't get mixed up into this mud pit, Nameless Nya cautioned her earnestly. Yuan Wan rolled her eyes at Nameless Nya. She'd like to extract herself from this pit, but she kept sinking deeper, so how was it that easy to leave? Boss Famous. Azura and our Nya family has some business transactions and we don't have any animosities. If we help you deal with Azura, we'd be acting on behalf of the entire Nya family in the independent state, so, that'd be inappropriate. Nameless Nya shook his head. It wasn't that he was unwilling to help Yuan Wan, he couldn't help her. Azura had never provoked the Nya family, but if the Nya family suddenly went up and slapped Azura for no reason, that wouldn't be appropriate. Yuan Wan wanted to cry. She'd like to go to the Nya residence and hug her baby Tang Tang. She didn't want to be some president of the Fearless Alliance anymore. Nonetheless, Yuan Wan could understand Nameless Nya not helping her since he did represent the entire Nya family, not just himself. It was just wishful thinking. How about this, I'll visit the Nya residence and see Tang Tang in 3 days after attending Azura's conference, Yuan Wan said happily. No problem, Sister Famous Yi. The Nya family will always welcome you. Nameless Nya grinned. Thank you, Yuan Wan nodded. Before Yuan Wan could say anything else, Nameless Nya added, although I can't help you. I can get a mercenary team under me to help you. Mercenary team? Yuan Wan started. That's right. This mercenary team. Forget it, you'll find out later, Nameless Nya said. Although Yuan Wan was curious about this mercenary team, she didn't think too much about it. After chatting a little longer with Nameless Nya and Taoist devotee, Yuan Wan got up and left to prepare for Azura's conference in 3 days. During these 3 days, Yuan Wan was mostly busy with business related to the Rose of Death. She also discussed the details of their plan to cause trouble at the conference with Big Dipper and 7 Star. 3 days later, Yuan Wan was sitting inside her office in the Fearless Alliance. One hand was scratching Virus while the other hand petted Great White. She thought, if it doesn't work out, I can bring Great White and Virus there to shake up the room. There were only a few hours until Azura's conference. At that moment, a knock was suddenly heard from the office doors. Enter, Yuan called out. A second later, 3 men entered Yuan's sight. One of the men wore a pair of gold-framed glasses and a Chinese tunic suit, his face sickly pale. The second man had long hair and extraordinary looks, while the third person was a bit special. He was actually a child around 11 or 12 years old, but intelligence and sharpness were clear in this child's eyes. Greetings, Sis Feng. The 3 people simultaneously said after they got close to Yuan. Chapter 1397 In her office at the Fearless Alliance's headquarters, Yuan sat in her chair and examined the 3 people before her with a confused expression. Based on these people's outfits, they were members of the Fearless Alliance. Also, what was up with this child? Yuan wasn't in a hurry to speak and waited for their explanation. The long, curly-haired man came up and flung his hair back, a mesmerizing smile spreading across his face. Sis Feng, excuse us for the disturbance. We're the Star Destroyer mercenary team. The Star Destroyer mercenary team, Yuan looked surprised. After coming to the independent state, Yuan gained an overall understanding of the mercenary groups in the independent state. The Star Destroyer mercenary team was considered a legendary mercenary team in the independent state, even in all of Europe. Rumors said the Star Destroyer mercenary team had never failed any mission that they accepted. Their success rate was 100%. You're the mercenary team under Nameless Nye. Yuan looked pensive. That's right. Our Star Destroyer mercenary team is a T2 mercenary group under Lord Nye, the curly-haired man answered with a nod. A T2 mercenary group meant they were second-tier mercenaries amongst all the mercenaries under Nameless Nye. They weren't top-tier yet. The Star Destroyer mercenary team not only belonged to Nameless Nye but was only a second-tier mercenary group in Nameless Nye's hands. Wasn't this a bit over the top? Yuan looked mystified. Could it be that she truly underestimated Nameless Nye? Sis Feng, Lord Nye told us to assist you this time, the curly-haired man continued to say with a smile. The curly-haired man added, if you're certain about hiring us, please give us the down payment first. Otherwise, it'll put us in a difficult place when Lord Nye asks us for money. Yuan's face darkened immediately. Nameless Nye seriously only thought about money. Lord Nye also said you could give us an IOU if you don't have spare money right now, Sis Feng, the curly-haired man said. Yuan nodded and wrote an IOU in front of the 3 people. What's up with this child? Is he also part of the Star Destroyer mercenary team? Yuan examined the 11 or 12-year-old youth in front of her with a strange expression. The youth had an innocent and harmless face and wore a cute casual outfit and a child's cap. He looked rather adorable and didn't look like a mercenary no matter what. The man in a Chinese tunic suit pushed his gold-framed glasses up with his pointer finger and explained aloofly, his name is Fu Shengwen. He's not a child, he just has a health issue and can't grow older. Yuan was pensive. She had never heard about this type of situation in China where an adult in his 20s or 30s looked like a child. This was her first time meeting someone like this. Very well. Yuan nodded and happily said, Nameless Nye must have told everyone, right? Do you have the guts to cause trouble at Azura's conference? The curly-haired man walked closer to Yuan and confidently smiled. Sis Feng, we're a mercenary team. There's nothing that a mercenary doesn't dare to do to a person or a power, let alone Azura. About this compensation though, the curly-haired man looked at the number on the debt certificate and sighed helplessly. This woman's compensation seriously wasn't much. Chapter 1398 After a discussion with the Star Destroyer mercenary team, Yuan had them leave first to start preparing while she also left and drove toward her house. After about half an hour, Yuan parked in front of Yi Shuihan's house. Yi Wanwan looked at the extra thick door in front of her and knocked. Absolute silence greeted her. Knight-errant Yi Wanwan didn't give up and knocked again. After knocking several minutes, the door opened from the inside with a creak. Yi Shuihan stood in the doorway sleepily wearing SpongeBob pajamas, his eyes somewhat red as though his dreams were disturbed. Speak. Viciousness surfaced in Yi Shuihan's eyes. Knight-errant Yi. I came to perform after-sales service and check to see if your door had any problems, Yi Wanwan said with a smile. Yi Shuihan pondered over it for a few seconds before shifting to the side and allowing Yi Wanwan to enter the house. Yi Wanwan relaxed and entered. She made a show of examining the newly installed door. The quality is decent, but it's too expensive, Yi Shuihan said to Yi Wanwan. Expensive? Yi Wanwan was startled. She didn't tell Big Dipper to take money from Yi Shuihan, so why did "it's too expensive" mean? Knight-errant Yi, you paid? Yi Wanwan asked. Yi Shuihan glanced at Yi Wanwan. Your installation worker said the door was an exclusively made limited edition that's worth $200,000. He asked me for $100,000. Yi Wanwan froze in her spot, dumbfounded. This door was directly purchased at a store and only cost a few $1,000s. Yet, Big Dipper turned around and asked Yi Shuihan for $100,000. Most importantly, Big Dipper never mentioned this payment to her. Knight-errant Yi, you gave the money? Yi Wanwan smiled in embarrassment. I'm not a bandit. Yi Shuihan dryly glanced at Yi Wanwan and turned to walk into the house. It appears he did give it. Yi Wanwan wished nothing more than to immediately return to the Fearless Alliance and skin Big Dipper. He was too crafty. A moment later, Yi Wanwan entered the living room and found Yi Shuihan lying on the sofa with a black eye mask over his eyes. Knight-errant Yi. I heard something, but I don't know whether to tell you. If I say it, I feel like it'd be disrespectful to you. If I don't say it, I'd feel like I'm a bad friend. Yi Wanwan looked conflicted. Yi Shuihan said lightly, speak your mind. Knight-errant Yi. Are you and Lord Azura brothers? Yi Wanwan asked, thirsting for gossip. I don't have any brothers, Shuihan answered aloofly. Yi Wanwan relaxed upon hearing that. Someone like Yi Shuihan would rarely lie. If he said they weren't brothers, then they definitely weren't brothers. Yi Wanwan actually came there in hopes of obtaining Yi Shuihan's assistance. If Yi Shuihan could help her handle Lord Azura, all would be well with the world. Ahem, then I'll speak frankly. I recently heard that Lord Azura was very disrespectful to you, Knight-errant Yi. He said something about how the strongest person in the independent state was him, Lord Azura, not some Yi Shuihan, Yi Wanwan said, acting as if it was true. However, Yi Shuihan lay unmoving on the sofa, seemingly uncaring about Yi Wanwan's words. Chapter 1399 Also, Lord Azura said you weren't a match for him in both literature and martial arts. He said you were at the same level as the president of the Fearless Alliance at most, Knight-errant Yi. Upon seeing a lack of reaction from Yi Shuihan, Yi Wanwan continued to spice up the tale. Lord Azura also said you better not run into him in the independent state. Otherwise, he'd make you regret being born. Yi Wanwan rambled on for half a day, but Yi Shuihan still remained unaffected and ignored her, as though she was talking about someone else. She stared at Yi Shuihan with a frown. Yi Shuihan didn't fall asleep while she was doing her monologue, right? A moment later, Shuihan finally spoke. That's what you wanted to tell me. Yi Wanwan nodded vehemently and said, that's right. Knight-errant Yi, Lord Azura offended and slandered you so much. If I were you, I would definitely make him pay. Later this evening, Lord Azura is holding a conference. At that time, he'll definitely personally attend. Knight-errant Yi, if you're angry, I can take you to Lord Azura and demand an explanation. As long as Yi Shuihan was enraged and agreed, her objective would be achieved. I'm not angry, Shuihan replied indifferently. I never said I was number one in the world. If you like these superficial titles, you can take it. Yi Wanwan's lips twitched. What a broad-minded person. She previously heard that Yi Shuihan only attacked ancient clans and ignored all the other powers. As long as you didn't insult Yi Shuihan in front of him, he absolutely wouldn't care. Knight-errant Yi, you won't think about it. Yi Wanwan couldn't accept it. I'm only interested in ancient clans. If you have news of an ancient clan's higher-up making trips outside, you can inform me, Yi Shuihan said. Yi Wanwan, even if she did obtain news of an ancient clan higher-up leaving their clan, she wouldn't dare to tell Yi Shuihan. What if Yi Shuihan killed that higher-up? Those ancient clans wouldn't seek Yi Shuihan out, they'd definitely hunt her down. Oh right. Yi Shuihan took off his eye mask and got up from the sofa suddenly, going to the fridge and taking out a bottle. He handed it to Yi Wanwan and said, "Try this strong liquor that I brewed. It tastes decent." Yi Wanwan accepted the bottle, her lips twitching. She was tricked once already, how could she get tricked a second time? Yi Wanwan had a deep understanding of the liquor brewed by Yi Shuihan by now. They were all basically saccharine water. Alright. I'll taste it thoroughly when I'm home. Yi Wanwan turned to leave. Hold on, Shuihan called out. What is it, Knight-errant Yi? Yi Wanwan asked curiously. I have a little disciple named Nye Tangshao. He's the little young master of the Nye family, one of the 4 great clans in the independent state, Yi Shuihan said as he took off his eye mask again. Yi Wanwan froze in her spot. Tangtang's. Yi Shuihan's little disciple. What's going on? Yi Wanwan looked at Yi Shuihan silently, waiting for him to continue. My disciple has never seen his mother, but he sought me out some time ago and told me his mother came home. However, my disciple is fairly suspicious of his mother's identity and wanted me to help him look into it, Yi Shuihan explained slowly. Yi Wanwan had an inkling about this matter. After Tangtang's mother returned, Tang Tang found it hard to accept initially. Yi Wanwan didn't expect Tang Tang to be Yi Shuihan's disciple and request Yi Shuihan to help him investigate his mother's identity though. Isn't this too much of a coincidence? Chapter 1400 Then. What does Knight-errant Yi want me to do? Yi Wanwan asked, perplexed. This is related to the Nye family. I once swore that I wouldn't participate in any matters of factions that aren't related to the ancient clans in the independent state. Although you sell doors, you should have a lot more means and channels for information than me. I don't have many friends, so I'd like you to help me investigate for my disciple. Yi Shuihan looked at Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan was at a loss for words. Her situation was a bit awkward. She was the one who looked after Tang Tang back in China, which led to Madame Nye and Tangtang's mother to have a warped perception of her. If she investigated Tangtang's mother at a time like this. If Yi Shuihan was speaking the truth though and Tangtang's mother was truly a fake, she wouldn't have any resentment about doing this for Tang Tang. However, if Tangtang's mother wasn't a fake and was real, she'd probably cause Tang Tang and his mother's relationship to deteriorate further by rashly investigating it. Knight-errant Yi, how reliable is his intel? Yi Wanwan asked with a frown. I don't know. Yi Shuihan shook his head. Aside from the ancient clans, I'm unfamiliar with the rest of the factions in the independent state, which is why I wanted you to help my disciple look into it. Yi Wanwan contemplated it for a long while before finally nodding. Then. I'll try my best. She was coincidentally going to see Tang Tang in the Nye residence in a few days, so she could look into it a little without any major problems. Thanks. Yi Shuihan nodded. Also, please keep my master-disciple relationship with Nye Tangshao a secret, Miss Yi. Sure, Yi Wanwan agreed. It was almost evening when she left Yi Shuihan's residence. Yi Wanwan sighed. She originally came to see Yi Shuihan today to ask him to help her handle Lord Azura, but in the end, Yi Shuihan didn't help her and she had to help him instead. This transaction was a pitiful loss. Soon, 2 cars parked by the roadside. 7 Star and Big Dipper were in one, and the Star Destroyer mercenary team was in the second one. Yuan strolled forward and entered the back seat of the car driven by 7 Star. Yuan had informed Big Dipper to pick her up to attend Lord Azura's conference when it was time. 7 Star, drive, Yuan ordered. The car started moving immediately. Sis Feng. How was it? Is piece of shit willing to help? Big Dipper asked Yuan. It would have been fine if Big Dipper stayed silent, but Yuan was enraged the second he said that. Yuan's face was icily stern as she surveyed Big Dipper. A while later, she asked, "Did you have fun installing the door?" Big Dipper grew embarrassed, as though he already knew what Yuan wanted to say. "You demanded $100,000 to install a door. Are you a bandit?" Yuan stared at Big Dipper. Big Dipper shook his head vehemently. "Yes. Sis Feng, I'm a bandit. Isn't everyone in the Fearless Alliance a bandit?" Yuan was rendered speechless. "Sis Feng, look, since we can't beat piece of shit, we can win through intelligence. Piece of shit is a very reasonable person. I deceived him by saying the door was custom-made and limited edition, so it was worth $200,000, but I only asked for $100,000 from him. He was fairly grateful to me. So on a certain level, I've already used my intelligence to beat piece of shit." Yuan, no, you're just shameless. Chapter 14:01 Yuan wasn't in the mood to continue talking nonsense with Big Dipper. Thankfully, Yishuihan was extravagantly rich and didn't care. About 3 hours later, 7 Star drove the car to an enormous manor. Azura's conference today was held inside this manor. The manor's front door was packed with people already, and countless luxurious cars were arriving and parking near the manor. Bosses all of the major factions and districts exited their cars and entered the manor. Aside from the leaders of the various major factions, there were many passers-by who rushed from all over the state to witness this feast that signified Azura's revival. In addition, there were some special media agencies in the independent state who were standing by and waiting for explosive news. "Sis Feng, we're here," 7 Star said to Yuan. Yuan nodded slightly but wasn't in a hurry to leave the car. She sat in the back and assessed the situation outside the manor. Soon, as people noticed the car driven by 7 Star, their expressions became surprised. 7 Star from the Fearless Alliance. He's driving, the newcomer can't be, the president of the Fearless Alliance, Bro Flattop, right? Bro Flattop, Bai Feng? Are you joking? Hasn't Bai Feng disappeared for many years already? I wager it must be some senior manager from the Fearless Alliance. Ha, idiot. The president of the Fearless Alliance has returned for a while already. You don't even know that? That's right, emissaries from Azura went to the Fearless Alliance 3 days ago to demand tributes but were kicked out by the president of the Fearless Alliance. A few special media agencies were pointing their cameras towards 7 Star's car already. The return of the Fearless Alliance's president was indeed explosive news. However, the return of the Fearless Alliance's president to the independent state was fairly low-key. This conference between major factions of the independent state was her first public appearance. The media agencies in the independent state were similar to China's, but there were some differences. The independent state's media agencies only focused on news about the major factions, which were also the concern of the independent state residents. If this was China, media agencies would have probably spent some time on entertainment news, but in the independent state, the major factions and groups comprised the entire entertainment industry, so in a sense, it was the same. Back when Azura was besieged by all the factions, the Fearless Alliance was the most ferocious and enthusiastic. Now that Lord Azura of Azura has returned, he won't easily spare the Fearless Alliance. Lord Azura summoned so many factions for a conference this time, yet the president of the Fearless Alliance dared to attend. Isn't she too gutsy? Ha ha ha. Although the Fearless Alliance is frightening, the current Fearless Alliance is greatly inferior to the Fearless Alliance at its peak before. Moreover, even when the Fearless Alliance clashed with Azura at its peak, it was to no avail. The president of the Fearless Alliance is the same as back then, she's fearless of everything in the world. However, this time, she'll likely pay the price. I reckon Lord Azura won't spare the president of the Fearless Alliance this time. Perhaps the president will die at this conference today. As the crowd bustled with discussion, Big Dipper got out of the car and opened the left door. Yuan slowly exited the car wearing a black muslin outfit. Many spectators' eyes landed on Yuan. A handful of reporters from the special media agencies also swiftly encircled her. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.